Tracy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this July 21st. I apologize right off the bat. I have a bit of a cold, so my voice is a bit raspy. Welcome to Ireland for running our meeting this morning, so helps us with our getting our information out. Also calling the meeting to order, and we will start with a moment of reflection. I am now looking for confirmation of the agenda. Any changes? Deputy Mayor Williams?
Yes, I would like to move 8.5B, the fire truck report to 7.1A, and that way the fire chief can do his report if necessary to go on to other duties for the rest of the day.
Does anybody have an issue with that? And we will make that adjustment. Then I have that the council agenda dated July 21st, 2026 be approved as circulated with the change to move the fire chief up to 7.1A. Moved by Councillor Jeff Bell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm. All those in favor? And opposed, carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Councillor Vanessa.
The clerk's report 8.4C, the current grants.
Thank you. Any others? Being none, do we have a report for the council? We're gonna
Discussion later.
we'll do the closed session later after this meeting. So we are at consent agenda. Would anybody like to see anything pulled? And I do appreciate, I noticed that we have some additions in there that Ireland has added, that if they're looking for support, it's very helpful for us as councillors. And I wanted to point out there were some slight adjustments on the regular minutes. Just a typo on the addition of the chamber membership. So anybody like to see anything pulled this morning from 6.1 to 6.9? Seeing none, I have the recommendation of the consent agenda 6.1 to 6.9 be received for information about the regular and special council minutes of July 7th, 2026 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Corby, second by Councillor Jim Vanessa. All those in favor? Carried. We are at public meetings, minutes, and delegations. 7.1. All, if you'd like to come to the front. Steve Ocker, financial statement review.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here this morning. Our report is two parts. One is the full audited consolidated financial statements, and then we provide a 2-page kind of more detailed summary report. I should say, thanks to Tracy, I think this is the earliest I've been here in a long time. He's been coming November, December, so it's nice to be here in July. We all do a lot of municipalities, and I think this is the second one we're at. So thanks for Tracy for making the financial statements a priority. Just a few things about the statements. When we talk about consolidation, it's mostly 50% of your share of the Kirkland Woodland Community Center. Kirkland Woodland Pool, and 49% of the Lucan Goodall fire area. It doesn't really affect the statements too much. It adds about $75,000 income, $75,000 expenses. Adds a small deficit of $1,900. So not a huge effect, but it is consolidated. Both the audit, we did the interim audit, I think the week of November 10th. We were here in the middle of March to do the final audit. After our audit, we're issuing a clean audit report as per the financial statements. During the audit, we did not encounter any difficulties. Everything asked was provided for. When I'm here, I sit there. We all sit around in this room and we have access to your accounting records and everything, so that's all good. No disagreements with accounting policies of that sort, and didn't come across any with transactions or journal entries or anything that we would report to council. When we look at the consolidated financial statement, shows a surplus $519,000. Last year, $836,000. I think every year I try to explain that our statements, we use the very same numbers, but our statements are, we have to do a few accounting policies different. The biggest one this year is reserves. We show reserves on the balance sheet, but we don't show them as income or expenses on the income statement. So because you didn't do all your capital this year, you transferred 1.2 million to reserves. So the way you prepare your budget, that would be an expense because you needed money into reserves. Capital we treat different. You have to raise, when you do your budget, you treat capital like an expense because you have to raise cash to pay for it, where we set it up and we depreciate it. So there's a small difference there. There's also a small difference. There's the landfill closure expense of $10,000, which is basically just a liability to prepare for the future closure costs of the landfill sites. So generally speaking, at the end of the year, the balance sheet shows an increase in net financial assets by $819,000. So that just shows that you have more cash to work with than the prior year. Your reserves are up by 1.2 million. As I said, the surplus was 500,000. And so you ended the year on a pretty good basis. Looking at the first page of our report council, it's basically the balance sheet. Because you didn't do all your capital and you end up with more money in the bank at the end of the year, and also your reserves are higher. So just going through your balance sheet, the cash is higher because of that, and also because your payables are higher. We'll look at that also. The taxes receivable are higher. There's a bit of a glitch calculating the taxes with some of the categories. That was all settled in January of 2026 at the end of the year. Receivables are similar to last year. It's always HST, drains, etc. Long-term receivables are basically the same as your tile drain loans. It's basically, you show them as receivable and also as a loan. Other assets are just prepaid expenses. So total current assets 15.9, up 2 million from last year, mostly just because of more money in the bank. Things you owed at the end of the year, accounts payable are higher. At the end of the year, you owed Perth County $757,000 for your share of Road 125. You also owed a company $120,000 for a well, so that's why your payables are higher. So your assets, your liabilities are 2.9 million, so they're higher. But when you take the difference between assets and the liabilities, your net financial assets are 12.9 million, which, as I said, we're up 840,000 from the year before, so that's positive. The next page of our report is detailed of the income statement. It shows 5 years of comparison. We need to go through everything. Other capital grants, because your OC grant, 447,000, and a housing grant, 26,000. For comparison purposes, when you look at recreation, when your budget says 67,000, but the actual is 127, that's because your budget doesn't include your share of the Kirkton Wood Pool and Community Center. So total revenue, 8.4 million, higher than budgeted, higher last year. The expenses are pretty much the budget in prior years. Of course, your major expenses are the roads, and that's all broken down by the types there. Water and sewers higher, your aqua fees were higher. The total expenses 7.9 million, and the difference is your surplus of 519,000. As far as the audited financial statements, Our auditor's report is just a clean auditor's report. As far as the notes, on page 5 of the notes. There's a note about the landfill site, now it's called asset retirement obligations, it just says how much money you should have now to pay for future costs there. It went up by 10,000, so not a huge amount. There was a net on the next page, page 6, municipal debt, you have no municipal debt, so that's positive. These are just tile drain loans that are also shown as receivable. And then further down, there's a schedule of your reserves and it shows how your reserves went from 9.3 million to 10.5 million. A lot of that is because you didn't do all your capital. When you did your 2026 capital, you've carried forward about $1.5 million of projects that were included in 2025. Are there any questions on our report or the financial statements?
Any questions, Councillor Vanessa?
Earlier in your report, you mentioned that taxes receivable were up. And you said there was some accounting adjustments or something. Could you explain that a little further?
I don't know.
Ah.
Tracy could probably do better.
Yeah.
No.
That was, because they've changed how farmland is taxed, if you, property is sold, you have to go to Agricorp and make sure it's still a farmland. So there's a lot of people that don't realize that, so their property that are $18 million of farmland or whatever comes on as residential. So then we have farmers who get the bill and they, have a heart attack like I did. So then they have to deal with Agricorp to get that. So at the end of the year, there was a lot of them that refused to pay that. I don't blame them. And we said we would, not put interest or anything on it because we knew it was gonna be changed. And we did set up an assessment at rates at year end to cover the revenue that was showing in our books for that some omits that had come onto our books as revenue. That is something that a lot of treasurer has been working on with the ministry of this Agricorp because it skews when we do the budget to collect the tax revenue because I'm using that return roll as residential, but it's actually gonna change the farmland. So we're not getting a true tax rate because we're using the wrong assessments. So that's basically what that was, and like you said, it was mostly cleaned up in 2026 when the farmers all got onto Agricorp and got it changed back.
And the residential rate is 4 times the farm rate.
Yeah.
And accountant have a lot of clients that go through that, and then we're trying to get that through, and I'm sure a lot of people think you can just come to the tax from here and get it fixed. We have to go through the
Yeah,
problem.
Agricorp and then Empire.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then one more question. You did a consolidated statement with the Blanchard Fire Board, Kirkland Water Pool, the community center. Why was Perth East Fire Board not included?
That's comes up every year, and it's just something that it's with your agreement somehow. I'm not 100% sure because you pay a fee, and we just don't gross that up as revenue and expenses. It just shows us the amount that was transferred over.
Well, we have some ownership in that hall.
Yeah, that's.
Just curious.
I know we looked into that quite a few years ago and I couldn't figure that out. I could get a better answer for you, obviously, but it's just the way it's always been that way, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? And Tracy, just further on the tax one with the farms, you are going to send a letter out when that happens.
Leyland and I are working on when we get the new ones coming in, that we're sending these letters out to the property owners to hope that we don't waste this administrative tax them, then reduce, then reverse it. So we're trying to get ahead of it so that people are aware of what's in there. So it's hard sometimes with these big corporations buying the farm. We don't know who to send it to, but it's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, so.
Any other questions for Paul? Councillor Jeff?
Just a comment, I think it's great that we're getting this now rather than November, so kudos to both of you.
Mostly the Tracy.
Right, seeing no further questions, I have a recommendation that the council approves the draft 2025 audited financial statements for the township of Perth South as prepared by Seabock and Company. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councillor Jeff Bell. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
We are now going to go to 7.1A, fire chief Brower. Welcome to come on. Yeah, please, yeah. I've never had such big page numbers on the council. 11:47. Would you like to take the flight?
I can start and then Chief DeBrower can see here part as well. So this is the information that was received by the fire board this last week, and a new truck has been sought out through the tender process, and has come in under budget, and initially was budgeted for 800,000 and has come in at 740. So I think there's really two key recommendations that came out of the board. One is to purchase the truck for 740,000 plus HST. And the other one was surrounding, and this is more from an FYI point of view for council, where the money is coming from. And the board made a decision to use a little bit more of reserves than was initially recommended, but still perfectly comfortable with the amount that will be left. So there will be some additional costs for the town in 2027 as part of the budgeting process. But keeping in mind there will be additional money put into reserves as well as part of the 2027 budget process. So outside of that, in terms of the truck itself, Chief DeBrower would be far better to describe that, but I think it certainly meets all of the needs that the department has.
Chief Brown, do you want to fill us in?
For the operational requirements of this truck, we wanted a truck that would last like 20 to 25 years and be very versatile. It's a pumper tanker, not only a pumper, it leans more toward a pumper, but it'll also truck water. And I think that's what we were after, and it'll provide that suppression as first on scene. And now, like with the two departments amalgamated, you've got another department there. If it ends up a big agricultural fire, then the second department would be showing up. So this one would provide, I think it'll look after probably 85% of the suppression calls. And it's good for traffic control and everything else. Very well equipped and came in under budget, which is always good. So if you've got any further questions on the truck or anything.
Any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Jeff Bell?
Is 25 years a typical life cycle for one of these trucks?
Through the mayor, no, they like it 15 to 20 years, but the trucks are built a lot better now. It's not a real high use truck. I'm seeing this haul as like a 50 to 100 calls a year, and I think its biggest problem is it won't pump enough water. They sit a lot and everything else, but I mean, as far as the truck standing up compared to the older trucks, it's a far better truck, so.
Thank you.
Yes, perhaps Chief could explain, we ended up with one tender, perhaps you can explain why that was.
It went out for tender. There was 5 different manufacturers that were interested in the tender that pulled the tenders and looked at them. And then it went down to 2. Metal Fab is one of the manufacturers. We've got a truck from that our manufacturer. It works very well. But the second tender, they listed 5 questions they asked. And the second tender was not ISO 9000 certified. They had their own independent certification on the trucks. And that was kind of that put everything on a level playing field for the manufacturers. So they actually didn't put a tender in for it then. The other 3 were just too busy at this time. They were all Canadian manufacturers. And I think they're very busy making Canadian trucks. So this one comes out of Centerville, New Brunswick, is where this truck will be manufactured.
What would be the expected delivery?
What's that?
What would be the expected delivery date of the truck?
To the mayor, one of the big reasons we're trying to keep this moving forward is that in 2027, the new emissions come on the chassis. And if we get this ordered before the end of the month, then it will be in 2026 emissions, which will save us probably 35,000 or 40,000. That's all kind of an estimate. And I don't really want to have the first emissions year of a truck, because usually there's lots of problems, but I expect the chassis will be delivered the end of this year. And then the truck will be built probably by August. Something like that. It'll be the fall of next year really before it shows up.
Any further questions for the chief? Seeing none, I have a recommendation that the council endorse approving the tender for the supply and delivery of a new 4-door commercial pumper tanker to Metal Fab Limited in the amount of 740,000 plus HST. Moved by Councillor Corby, second by Deputy Mayor Wilton. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, chief.
That was easy. Thank you very much. Thanks for moving that forward.
All right, we are back on track to 7.2. Adrian, you will welcome you about the floor.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you also for the advanced notice about the draft ESR returning to council. We very much appreciate it. I'm here because residents have been raising concerns for years and important questions remain unanswered. The development team here is here today to advance the Sebringville subdivision. And we are here to advocate for the best interests of our community. That means responsible growth, careful management of limited groundwater resources, and protection of the interests of the people who already live in Sebringville. The Sebringville Environmental Assessment was presented as a community-wide study of water and wastewater servicing. It was supposed to consider the village's current and future needs, including the proposed development. On December 16th, council was given a much more narrow purpose. If the subdivision is approved, what is the best way to provide water and wastewater services for it? One approach plans for the community as a whole, and the other determines how to service one proposed development. This drift may be a foreseeable consequence of a developer-funded and developer-led EA process without independent township oversight. And we see this as a problem, because whether or not this particular development happens, Sebringville needs a plan, and the plan was to have a plan for Sebringville. A well ran dry. We've had low water level warnings. Water constraints have been identified as far back as 2012. And you can't plan without information. The environmental study report recommends communal water and wastewater systems serving only the proposed subdivision. It does not fully account for existing conditions or the current and future needs of the community. Existing residents have no opportunity to connect, whether they could benefit from it, need it or not. And future business growth is not accommodated. And we were warned that this type of solution might serve a developer's project while constraining growth elsewhere. For example, maybe Perth East. Now, a great deal of work has been completed in the 7 months since council first received the draft report. That confirms the wisdom of council's December decision to receive the report for information rather than endorse it at that time, even though BM Ross was generally in agreement with the report as it was presented at that time. One important improvement concerns groundwater. Residents repeatedly asked for hydrogeological testing. We appealed to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. There still was no hydrogeological study when council was last expected to endorse the draft ESR. Fortunately, the ministry required hydrogeological study and as well requires additional investigation and commitments for further work. We see this as very positive. But the central question remains unanswered. Can the proposed water system operate over the long term without affecting the people who already depend on it in Sebringville? The testing completed so far does not answer that question. According to the ministry, the pumping test was too short to show how many, to show what might happen when groundwater is withdrawn every day for months or years. And it tested one well. During that test, water level changes were recorded in private wells more than 500 meters away. The information available about existing wells may also be incomplete or outdated. So despite the conclusion of the EA, we don't know how much water can be withdrawn sustainably or what the long-term effects may be. The ministry says longer testing, additional monitoring, and further analysis are still required. But the recommendation before council today asks you, councillors, to accept those unanswered questions as work deferred to a detailed design and permitting phase and later approval stages. And that would be after this EA is effectively finished and has been endorsed. And we see that as a problem. Questions that may affect the water security of an entire community are bigger than the detailed design of one proposed subdivision. Has the EA demonstrated that the proposed water system can operate over the long term without affecting the people who already depend on it in Seagreenville? We don't believe it has. So should you endorse the report? This is not the same as endorsing a development proposal. Endorsement is confirmation that the environmental assessment has done what it was supposed to do, that its conclusions are supported by the work completed to date, and that the recommended solution is acceptable and viable. It is more than a procedural step to advance process. It's your seal of approval. Before you provide that approval, you should be satisfied that the EA has addressed its purpose. It was presented as serving, and that the recommended solution is in the best interests of the whole community. Council also has a letter from Arcadis in today's agenda. Of course, you have like 1,151 pages, but we have retained Arcadis to conduct an independent planning and engineering review. That review is still underway because the final draft report was not released until July 15th. Council has already cautioned that endorsing the report may lock in servicing systems that cannot be economically expanded to serve other parts of Seagreenville. And that could limit the community's future development. This process has already been underway for years. So waiting another week or two for the only independent review available to council seems reasonable to us. And until council has that review and the outstanding groundwater work, we don't see how you can put the seal of approval on this report and conclude that endorsing it is in the best interest of the community. We also see that there are 2 councillors absent and understand that your agenda package, 1,151 pages, was only made available to you on Wednesday, the same as everybody else. That's not a lot of time to review it. And in the 7 months since that last presentation to you, there have been no discussions or updates that we could see over the course of 7 months of council meetings. We are asking council to defer endorsement of the environmental study report as presented. You have a right to complete, objective, independent information before you are asked to make this very consequential decision. Thank you.
Any councillors have any questions on this tool?
How can you not have any questions? I'm sorry. It is so obvious that this, this report does not support the environmental assessment. So I just don't understand.
Good. Thank you, Adrian. We're gonna go on to Mike Jones, if you want to listen to his report.
Okay, if there are any questions after the fact, we are happy to answer them. Thank you.
For inviting me here today. I have a brief presentation and suggested that I focus on the things that have occurred since our December visit here. And then, so I'll take, I think there's 17 slides. And after that, I'm available to answer any questions. The second slide, please. The first couple of slides are just a little bit of a rehash. This is just the slide that shows the study area of Sebringville. And the blue dots are some of the surface water stations that we monitored during the remote capacity study. The red area is the subdivision property, and the area to the west of that are other areas owned by the applicant. Next slide, please. This is a figure that's out of the municipal class CA manual and just highlights the 5 phases of the class CA. And the red circle is where we're at in the process at the present time. Next slide, please. So the recommendations in the ESR are the preferred alternative for wastewater and for water are local facilities for wastewater with the surface water discharge into the Iverton drain and using a common outlet structure with the stormwater pond. The preferred alternative for drinking water was a local municipal plant that serves the new subdivision with an emergency connection to the Boyce Street system. So if the Boyce Street system only has a current well in operation, if there was a problem with that well, we would be able to open up that valve and create a connection so that that community would continue to have water. Next slide, please. We looked at 4 locations on the subdivision property for both the water and the wastewater plant. For the drinking water plant, the preferred location is the one that's on the northwest corner. It's the red dot that's shown, and it's on block 24 in the subdivision. The wastewater plant, the preferred location for it was selected to be in the park block at the center red dot at the south end of the property, so near the end of that cul-de-sac. And that has the stormwater pond immediately to its right, and the Iverton drain then joins the Black Creek towards the northeast from there. So next slide. There's further information in the report about the type of treatment and the conceptual design of the plant. And we looked at several different technologies and selected a modified sequence batch reactor design as being the most appropriate for this. It would have tertiary treatment for enhanced removal of phosphorus and nutrients. And because it's a surface water discharge point, the effluent is also disinfected with UV before it is released. The solids treatment, so as part of the treatment process, there's certain things that don't degrade, and those accumulate in sludge within the plant. The sludge is then handled, stabilized, and there's the ability to store it within the plant, and then it's trucked away. There's 2 main, the most common method of handling sludge present in Ontario is to spread it on agricultural fields. The other way that is becoming more prolific and it is certainly common in the United States is to pelletize it and use it as agricultural fertilizer. There's a plant that does that in Lisbon. Well, it's local here. Next slide, please. The drinking water plant, we have a single test well that we've used to evaluate hydrogeologic properties at the site. we always include a second well in the design of a plant for redundancy. Treatment, it basically is filtration if it's needed. Based on the information we have at present, we do not believe that that will be required. And then it's disinfected with chlorine. So the purpose of using chlorine versus UV is it creates a residual disinfection. So as the water moves through the distribution pipes, it continues to be safe. The plant would include storage for fire protection as well as drinking water. The peak flows during drinking water periods as well. So we're gonna have high lift pumps to connect to the distribution system that brings it into the community. Excuse me. Both of the plants would have backup power. And that's usually a diesel or natural gas generator. And that would then kick on, so that in the case of a power outage, both the water system as well as the wastewater system would continue to function. Next slide, please. So what's happened, and that information was primarily included within the December report. So what's changed since then? Since then, we had another public meeting on January 8th. The draft ESR, the December report, was circulated to the MECP, and they have reviewed it and provided comments on it, as have the Conservation Authority. The MECP comments primarily focused on planning issues and hydrogeology. They had some questions regarding surface water and air emissions and odor. So we've addressed that with them and also within the revised version of the report. UTRCA's comments primarily related to source water protection and the activities that mainly are done in the future because they're done after the detailed design of the facility. Next slide, please. The other thing that we did in the December report, we had taken the hydrogeologic information that we had obtained and basically summarized it and presented it in the context of the ESR. With MECP, they had suggested that we actually issue a separate hydrogeologic report that provides all the details about the information and how we interpreted the data and how we arrived at the decisions we did. So that report was completed. That was also circulated to MECP and to the Conservation Authority. And the township through BMROS also retained another hydrogeologic company to provide the peer review for that too. So based on some further comments and questions, and one of the things that we had concluded, which was based on the information obtained during drilling. So when you're drilling, you're circulating water through the drill stem and you're using water to basically flush the cuttings out of the well. When you hit a zone that produces water, you lose some of that circulation. And so you can tell what depths and where you're producing water. And you also have a very good idea about what volume water you can produce at each of those horizons. So based on drilling, we knew that we have both a shallow zone and a zone in the middle that does not produce very much water. And then we have a deeper zone that produces a lot of water. So we had recommended basically casing off or sealing off that upper zone. And part of the reason to do that is it limits the connection to the shallow zone, which is used by all of the private wells and also the Boy Street well in the town. And what that would mean is that the subdivision wells of these wells would be hydraulically isolated from the zone that is providing water to the rest of the community. The purpose of doing that is to limit the cross connection between the two and the interference so that these wells will not affect wells in the community. The NCP and the township's peer reviewer wanted some further confirmation. So what we did was some downhole work, basically used a downhole video camera called TeleViewer that takes a full 360-degree image as it's lowered down the well, so that you can see the structure, you can see the rock, you can see basically what's going on. And we did that under static conditions, and we also did it under flowing conditions. The purpose of doing it under flowing conditions is, and we did that while pumping at 50 gallons a minute, which is close to what the final production rate will be. The purpose of doing that is you see particles move around inside the well, so you can actually see active flow zones. And the other thing we did was we had to create a flow profile, and a flow profile basically is a little impeller device, and you lower it below the pump, and you can tell from the speed of the impeller more information about what zones are producing water. So we took all of that information, and that was then revised into the draft DSR that you have before you now. So before you got it, BM Ross did a complete review of that document, specifically on behalf of the township directly. So I view that we work for the developer, but we also work for the township because you're co-proponents in the study. But BM Ross is there to basically provide that double check to make sure that we didn't miss things, or that your views are being held. Next. The other thing is both the Conservation Authority and MECP have reviewed the similar capacity study and approved the draft effluent criteria that are proposed in that report, and they're also carried forward into the draft DSR. The purpose of these effluent criteria is to, in essence, create maximum criteria that would then be used through the detailed design of the plant. And typically what happens is you can use best available technology to achieve better criteria, but you're not going to have criteria that are going to be higher than these values. And these values are selected on the basis of potential impact to water quality in the Iverton Drain and also in Black Creek. So, and that similar capacity, strictly speaking, where it comes from is we used to use basically the dilution potential within the water bodies to ensure that the concentrations were low enough that you're not harming aquatic habitat. And I say used to because we don't do that anymore, because the technologies are good enough now that you can achieve that basically coming straight out of a plant. And that's what these reflect. So, and then I just included a summary of what the acronyms are. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight specifically what we changed in the report. So in a phase 3 report, it would normally just be the last section of this, which is the technology-based evaluation of what's being proposed. And an ESR would include the information from phases 1 and 2 and 3. It includes the communications and consultation records with agencies, the public, First Nations, any of the stakeholders in essence. So all it does is take all of the information that has been put together since we started this in 2018 and puts everything into one place. The other thing we did was we increased the level of detail on the hydrogeology in the report. And we've incorporated the comments that we received on that December report as well. I will note that there were no changes to that technology section that we call phase 3. So that's the same as what it was in the December report. Next slide, please. Wanted to touch briefly on the hydrogeology report itself. So in the hydrogeology section, we look at really the physical setting. So we're looking at the nature of the overburden and the bedrock. And in this case, the test well is 410 feet deep. So we're kind of focusing on the overburden in the top 500 feet, or 500 feet from ground level. The other thing that we did was there's some really interesting provincial resources now. They've come out recently with a 3-dimensional simulation of the bedrock in all of basically everywhere south of the Precambrian Shield in the province. And so it gives you a good database in order to verify what the geology is. In doing that, they compiled information from, I think, something like 27,000 different wells. Previously, what we used to do is basically use the Ontario Geologic Survey mapping, and that was kind of based on mainly oil and gas wells. And in some cases, you'd be extrapolating data over hundreds of kilometers. So it's certainly a more defined tool at the present time. It also takes and presents the information. We did a series of pump tests on the test well. So we did 3 step tests, and step tests are short duration tests, and each one was an hour long. And you do them at progressively increasing levels of flow rate. So we did them at 50 gallons a minute, 100 gallons a minute, 150 gallons a minute. And the reason you do that is how the well hydraulically responds depends on what flow rate is. And then we did a 24-hour long pump test at 832 liters per minute. So that was 24 hours. Between each of the step tests and the main test, you let the well recover. So then you have the data from the drawdown periods, the pumping periods, the recovery periods, and then the longer term test as well. So over that 24-hour period, we pumped about 1.4 million liters of water out of that well. And we drew down that well a total of 8.9 meters, which, if I remember, is 7 or 11% of the available drawdown. Go to the next slide, please. So this is that geologic profile that I was referring to. There's another one in that report as well. I just put in one here. This is east-west, basically along Highway 8. And so the left-hand side is the west side of town, and the right-hand side is the east side of town. And I've included all of the wells along Highway 8 that are within 75 meters offset from the alignment of this cross section. And this is typical of all the wells in town. You can see they all go down basically into halfway, or in some cases getting close to the bottom of that bright green layer. And that bright green layer happens to be called the Lucas Formation. The test well is the one well that's about a third of the way in from the left, and it goes down to the yellow formation. Excuse me. The main production zone in the well is basically the joint between the yellow band and that thin green band. So it's in limestone bedrock. The rock itself is generally low permeability. Most of the water comes from bedding plane fractures, which are the joints between the different formations. And so that's, and you can see that in the videos and the photos. The photos are included in the ESR they're in the appendix of the hydrogeology report, and that is completely within the draft ESR too. Next slide, please. So this is the hydrograph of the 24-hour test. So this line here is the water level in that pumping well. The other lines at the top is during the 24-hour test, we monitored water levels in 4 different private wells, basically at different distances and in different directions, and 2 of them are essentially halfway between the test well and the Boyce Street well. We wanted to monitor the Boyce Street well, but we were not permitted to do that because in order to do it, the operator has a disinfection protocol, so they would have had to shut down the well for at least 48 hours. And we didn't want to deprive the Boyce Street or the people that use the Boyce Street water of water for that long. You can see in the private well hydrographs, there's a small effect, and that effect is 2 or 3% of the available water column within those wells. And the reason that occurs is in the test well, the shallow zone is not paced off and isolated from the deep zone. So it draws from both zones together. About 30 and the amount that comes from the different zones varies depending upon how hard you pump the well. So at this pump rate, approximately 30% of the water comes from the upper zone and 70% of the water comes from the deeper zone. Excuse me. The other thing, next slide, please. So what we can do is take all of that data and you can then calculate long-term drawdown and recovery data from for both that well itself and also at varying radial distances and at over different time periods as well. So there's a fair bit of discussion in the report about how this is calculated, and each of these lines, the different colored lines on the right hand side, sorry, I have to get off because I can't read it. The ones on the left hand side relate to different time periods, where the green one is what the predicted drawdown would be after 20 years. The one on the right hand side is dry down versus time at different distances. So the lesser one is 100 meters and that goes down to 500. So it just allows you to calculate how that's going to perform, and it gives you a baseline to monitor. And the other thing you'll notice, there's red dots. Those are the observed drawdown that we saw in the private wells and the test well during the actual monitoring period. And as we want to be, the calculations are more conservative than the data that we actually saw. So, next slide, please. Last time I had a slide that showed basically the next steps in the studies and things like that, and I've continued that here, but added the information or put red text beside the things that we've done. the next step, if council elects to endorse the study, is the notice of completion would be published, and it commences a 30-day review period by agencies, stakeholders, the public, First Nations. And then what happens is all of the comments that are received from any of those stakeholders is then incorporated or addressed somehow through the ESR. And then at that point, the ESR is considered accepted. Next slide, please. It doesn't mean that the work's done. There's still, this is really the first stage of the technical work towards developing, in this case, a municipal water supply. Has to go through detailed design. The other thing, I guess, that I'll say is, and the detailed design is based on what the composition of the proposed subdivision is. So there's in the ESR, there's information on volumes and what's expected based on the current proposed site plan. If the site plan changes, then that design changes. So it has to move in lockstep. So you would only approve something based on what's actually going to be built in the future. The detailed design is basically approved through the Ministry of the Environment for the water and the wastewater. And there's various aspects to that. So there's the design of the plant itself. It has to also get approval for odor emissions, and in this case, odor control, air emissions from the backup generator, those types of things. There's also a requirement to get a permit to take water, and that's also through the Ministry of the Environment. That would require some additional testing of the well, of the test well in this case, and possibly going ahead and drilling the second well as well. One thing I will say is the current test well, we determined that the sustainable yield of the existing test well was over 1,200 liters per minute. And the average pumping is rate for the currently proposed subdivision, and the volumes associated with it would be 161 liters per minute. So this one well is more than capable of supplying the subdivision, basically in perpetuity. The other thing that gets done is based on well testing. Then there's a groundwater model, which is a numeric simulation of the capture zones for the wells. And that program, called Source Water Protection, is coordinated through the Conservation Authority. And if you wanted to look it up, you can see that the Boyce Street well already has that done, and its capture zones are already simulated and that kind of thing. The other thing the ministry raised was species at risk. And so species at risk have been evaluated, but we would have to be reevaluated if the footprint of the subdivision was to expand. If it got smaller, there's no need to carry that further. Excuse me. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is a list of specifically what those are. So I mentioned the ECA for the wastewater, permit to take water, the air improvements, the drinking water license, and there's a works permit for the drinking water system. Again, that's approved through, that's more related to the treatment system and the operation of the treatment system and the distribution system. There's a works permit within from the Conservation Authority because the proposed outlet would interface with the regulated zone associated with the Iberkin drain. Based on the detailed design of the plant, we'd have to redo the odor control or odor model. And And the township has also asked to have included in the detailed design the odor control plan. These types of plants in general, and you saw it in Shakespeare, they really don't produce much odor, and basically unless you're standing right beside the vent stack, you don't smell anything. The Shakespeare plant and this one, or the one in the ESR, were simulated using the ministry's program to do odor calculations. The ministry have a set program, so you have to use their program, and they give you the climate database that goes with it. So that's the one thing the air emissions people with the ministry are very rigid that everybody is using their method. We also have to, during the design, you deal with an operations and maintenance plan for the plant, and also training for operators and licensed operators and that kind of thing. And also the source water protection for this. I think that's it. Next slide. That is it. Okay. Sorry, I don't, maybe that's a little long.
Before I open the floor to questions, Kelly Vaders from the Ross is here. Do you have any comments that you'd like to say?
I guess I need to say that we have done a detailed review of the ESR and the changes. We reviewed it in the context of the updated hydrogeology work that was done, the peer review, and the comments from MECP. And all of those comments have been incorporated into the ESR, and we're in agreement with the recommendations from the ESR. And I can answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor.
I have a couple, the first has to do with sewage. It was mentioned earlier that it should have been looked at and should be looked at, that the Stephenville, all of Stephenville be looked at, hooking into the sewage plant. To your knowledge, are there any septic systems failing in Stephenville and therefore would require?
I'm sure there are some that could be, through this study, we've talked with staff about that, but it's not a unusual rate. For example, when we did Shakespeare, like 80% of the systems were failing. So all septic systems have a design life, and that's typically 25 years, and meaning that they're expected to last at least 25 years. If you get a system that's 30, 40 years old, chances are it's gonna get clogged and you're gonna have to fix it and replace it. So that's gonna happen on a regular basis just through normal processes within the community that uses private septics.
And second question, we mentioned about the deep well, I think it was 410 feet. And you mentioned at one stage that there was a solid pipe blocking any water going down from higher up. And then you mentioned in the, I think in the pump test, that 30% of the water came from other aquifers and 70% came from the deep well. Can you clarify that? I'm
Yeah.
a little confused.
So the test well itself right now was installed in the same manner that a normal agricultural well would be. So it has a casing that goes down and is sealed just into the top of the bedrock. So that zone in the shallow zone in the test well is open. And so it's open hole through the rock all the way from basically 100 feet, which is around the bottom of the casing, and right down to the bottom at 410. To put it into production, you'd install a sleeve on the inside, which is called, and it has something called a K-packer that basically seals off that upper production zone, and then it would isolate the the source of water for the test well to being only the deeper zone. For the second well, and so two things, we would put in the K-Packer and test it to ensure that it's being effective. And one of the things, for example, when we did the pump test, we're pumping at 832 liters per minute. Basically, we pumped a week of water in one day. You would do those subsequent tests at the flow rate that you would actually use for the community. So you're gonna cut it back to being something in the order of 200 liters per minute. And as I've said before, well performance changes depending upon what your pump rate is. So we do that test with the K-Packer in place to evaluate its effectiveness. And the second well that would be drilled, the casing would extend fully from surface all the way down through that zone. So in either case, and assuming the testing shows it's effective, both wells would be isolated hydraulically.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Jeff Bell?
Just a couple here, you talked about interference with some private wells. The private wells conflicting with each other, can you speak to that, please, in a bit more detail?
Pardon me?
The conflict with, within private wells?
So, I mean, there was, the drawdown in the wells, in the private wells was 2 or 3% of the available water column within those wells.
Okay.
So during the course of, which in this case it was, I think, between 0.4 and 1.1 meters. That you see some level of drawdown does not mean you're having a negative effect. At no time were any of the wells compromised, and the predictions are that no private wells would be compromised by the subdivision wells, even if they were pumping and drawing 100% of the water from the shallow zone. So that drawdown curve that I showed, that and one of the assumptions is actually that there is no hydraulic isolation. So that assumes that they're fully connected, and that way we're looking at, you know, if you tried to do a hydraulic connection and it failed, either the casing corroded or something, or you didn't do it, or that the rock did not have a competent section that allowed you to isolate it, then you know, that we're looking at basically that worst case scenario. So we had delivered flyers to everyone along Highway 8 and also Station Road and Boyce Street, about the test itself, and also asking for volunteers to provide information on their wells, and also asking if we could put in a monitoring device in their wells. So 4 people, we actually did that. There was a 5th person who had volunteered to do it, but their well was not accessible, and we felt that if we opened the well, we might have damaged it and prevented its continued use. And there was another person who did volunteer, but they live in Toronto and they had renters here, and we were not able to coordinate with the landlord to access that. So during the future testing, we would do the same thing, and I would love to have more wells. There's one other person who has volunteered since then. So, and if we have the same 4, and we did use the same 4 when we were doing the televiewer work, so that would give us a 5th one, hopefully for sure, and maybe more.
And now, just on that note, and I'm sorry, if it was a presentation or in the hydrological report, I can't remember. Somewhere it said that you now made arrangements with,
Yes,
Stockwood to be able to test at the Voice Street well.
yes,
So
so,
that plan for the next test, that
yes,
the test, use that as a test.
yeah. What we did, we worked with, Aqua, who are the operators,
Mhm.
and have come up with a monitoring proposal. And that, does not require them to shut down the well. And so one of the things that happens is they take water levels and they put monitoring devices in the well on a regular basis. So what they've agreed to is if we follow the same disinfection protocols that they do, that, they're happy to work with us.
Thank you.
Can you talk to about the Iberg drain a little bit? Sure, with groundwater and the flow out of the sewage treatment plant. I suspect it'll have to be upgraded. The Iberg drain, or has there been anything?
We've talked with township staff and the drain superintendent about what's required. They have done some work downstream from Station Road fairly recently in terms of cleaning it out. There, before that could be constructed and before the stormwater plant would be constructed, that information would have to be surveyed in detail. So when really that's a function relating to the stormwater. So the stormwater flow from the stormwater pond plan is to regulate it at 289 liters per minute. Sorry, liters per second. Right, liters per second. And the average day flow coming out of the wastewater plant is 2.3 liters per minute. So the effect on flow in the drain is really negligible related to the wastewater plant. It is become more critical for higher period flows from the stormwater pond. At the same time, the flow from the stormwater pond is capped at basically a 5-year storm, whereas the current flows are non-controlled. So it gets, if it's a 25-year storm or a 50-year storm, that's the flow that the drain sees on that particular day. The stormwater pond takes that extra water and basically attenuates the flow, so it stores some of it in the pond and then just releases it slowly over time. So if you think about 2.3 liters per minute as the flow from a wastewater plant, it's actually a very small volume.
But you know, like, I guess it's hard to get guard against a 5 or 6 inch rain in one night. I mean,
Yes,
but is that part of the calculation in that 250-year?
Yes.
Calculation?
for sure.
Any further questions? Sam? No?
One more, the sewage plant, when we went to Shakespeare, I was really impressed with it.
Yes,
This one here will be a little closer to the residential area than the Shakespeare one was.
it's actually further away.
Oh, okay.
It's further away because Shakespeare. I think it's within about 10 meters of being the same.
Yeah, so
So,
how many meters?
sorry. The drinking water plant is about the same distance as Shakespeare. The wastewater plant is double the distance away from what the Shakespeare plant is. Oh, it'll be 2 existing residents. To the new, the new buildings in the subdivision, they will be, the closest one is about 65 meters. And closest one in Shakespeare is 70 meters. That's the new building, but the ones to the existing residents are more than double what Shakespeare is.
Like the one in Shakespeare didn't even seem like it was there with
Yeah.
the way it was on.
So Jeff Bellin, then.
You go for it.
So just to follow up on Council Cordy's comments in the aggregate drain. I remember at last open house speaking with the gentleman, who lives off the aggregate drain, and he was complaining about flooding. Has there been any consideration to that and any mitigation that's gonna be put into place?
I'm
Other
sorry,
than-
consideration to,
The fact that the drain has a history of flooding.
yes. Well, the main thing, as I had mentioned, is the main way to control flooding is to control the runoff from stormwater. So the 25-year storm is approximately 14 or 1500 liters per second. So the water from the wastewater plant. And so if the pond is controlled to a maximum flow of 289, basically it's going to significantly reduce the flooding rates within the drain. But even under that 5-year flow, the flow from the plant is 1% of it.
Thank you.
What's the Vanessa, your turn?
In full disclosure here, I sent a pile of questions to Mike here Sunday. And he's answered them all, he's answered some more in his presentation, I would like to ask him if I have discretion to do that for the rest of council and for the members here. In the draft ESR, so there's about 6 different, 7, maybe 8 different appendages here. In the draft ESR, page 14, table 4. Says the average water consumption is 350 liters per person per day. And the average septic is only 233.
Right.
Why the discrepancy?
So it actually isn't a discrepancy. The capacity was the same for both in terms of per capita consumption. So it is 350 liters per day per person. The 233 is meters cubed per day, which is the total wastewater for the average day flow for the entire subdivision.
Okay, my mistake, thank you very much. Page 16, we talked about, I call it septage, it's actually sludge I was talking about.
Yes.
Thank you for that. You mentioned earlier in your presentation here that sludge has to be taken out of this plant, how much?
So, in answering your question, I had to go back and redo the calculations. What happens when you treat sludge, and you can treat it in a variety of ways, but one of the things you're doing is dewatering it and stabilizing it. So to handle sludge in as liquid slurry, you want your solid content to be about 3.5%. If you thicken it further, and you can take it up to about 8% and still handle it. At 3.5%, it generates about 1,000 liters of sludge per day. And so that's about 1 truck per pump.
And you had mentioned that the possibility still exists to spread that on farmland, I thought that had stopped.
They've stopped issuing new ECAs for it. It's all the places that have ECAs are allowed to continue.
So this would have to be pelletized then?
No, you would have to go to somebody who already has a license. Or you could pelletize it.
So then, you're getting a truckload a month, how much storage is actually at the site?
So the minimum requirement for the site from the ministry's guideline is 240 days. And the reason for that is you're only allowed to spread sludge on farmland when it hasn't been raining. So therefore, you have to be able to hold it year round, except for basically the dry part of the summer.
Okay, thank you. Page 19 of the ESR, as I mentioned, that there's 15 deeper wells, and I asked you if there was a map for this. And you did send one to me. I'm wondering if that could be made available
Sure.
somehow to council. Almost all of those wells were in Perth South. I think there was 4 or 5 in the city of Stratford.
So on that figure, what I did, so the way I got the data in the first place is the ministry has a database that's searchable. And basically you draw a circle around the area you want, and it downloads an Excel sheet of all the wells that are inside that location. I then, in looking at well depths, parsed out the ones that are deeper. And I also parsed out the municipal wells from the town of Sebringville. I'm sorry, my phone's just killed that. It's ringing in my head, my hearing aids. Got new hearing aids and I can't figure out how to work them. And I use my phone to control them. People look at you kind of cross-eyed and you're walking down the road just talking to yourself. So, sorry, I was saying that took that, the MECP well log database and parsed out all of the deep wells. And they subdivide it based on well use, so we can also parse out municipal wells and irrigation wells and agricultural wells. Commercial wells and private residential wells. And so I knew from our driller, which is Hayden Well Drilling, and they're really good drillers. They've drilled a lot of agricultural use wells in the area. And they're the ones who, you know, we first started having discussions with about this deeper zone. And the reason they knew was because they've done it in 25 different locations. So that sort of keyed us to look at those, and I just arbitrarily picked a 5 kilometer distance. The other thing that I did was, I knew from talking with staff at Stratford that 5 of their 11 wells are basically constructed exactly the way the test well is today. So it's a single well casing that goes down. They are not isolated from the shallow zone, but they do extend all the way down into the same deeper zone that the test well does. So.
Thanks, so that image will be available to get to council.
Well, I mean,
Those pins?
it depends on what the testing shows.
No, just what the map you sent me.
Oh,
Got that available?
yeah, yes, I can
No,
circulate that. I could maybe send it for those.
and when you're talking deeper wells here, the 15, they're in the deeper. I can't remember the basin, but they're farther down, they're 300 plus feet deep, right?
They're, yes, so they, the cutoff, I think for that, I think I used 100 meters, so that those wells, they're all a minimum of 300 and draw water from
I
that.
know 2 of those wells are my wells. I also know that 25, 30 years ago, but maybe it's 40 years, I mean, the city of Stratford drilled a new well in the, Lauren Ave. And it was a deep well, and I was one of the residents in the area concerned about water, just the same as the residents are now. And that well was drilled deeper. And there are 2 shallow wells within 200 feet of that well, and they've had no problems yet in that time frame. So going on, page 23, 24, 19, 22, you talked about wells and the separation. What is the separation in feet between the shallow wells? Like, your map is, it's too small for me to read the difference in.
Yeah, so
deeper and shallow.
would it be possible to go back to that vertical cross section? No, one more. So this zone up here where they are is between I think it's between 315 and 320 meters. And down here, this is, so it's like 100 meters deeper.
Okay. And then in those pages, you also mentioned, and I know when I was the other councilors here, you mentioned in your presentation about extending the casing all the way down.
Yes.
Is the intent to extend the casing on the test well?
Yes, so As I mentioned, what we would do with test well in order to do that is basically you put a sleeve down the inside of the well and it gets sealed in place. So,
And would that be the intention to do that? But that, it doesn't say anywhere in the.
so,
Or,
okay, the reason, it's still, a possibility one way or the other, and the reason for that is the ministry wants to see the results of how effective the isolation is, and before they want to fully support the idea. In principle, they agree that it's a good idea. So in principle, I think the answer is going to be yes. But it depends on what the numbers are.
and then there was talk also will be one in the second well, in the same, and the possibility if there was, issues, a third well further away.
Yeah, so if, I don't think there's any probability that we will need a third well. This well currently basically has 10 times the capacity of what's needed. If we have a second well that is the same, which it should be being drilled in, you know, in close proximity and to the same depth. So that would give us basically 20 times factor compared to what's required to service it. If we did, let's say we drilled one and it didn't pan out, there is a possibility to drill one basically down in the south area or near the park area. And that would separate the wells from each other and also further separate the wells from the existing community.
And I guess, I don't wanna beat on you here. The reason I'm asking these questions with the wells, if we went through, I think it's appendix D or E, was the comments from the community.
Yes.
And I would say 75% of the comments from the community were water related well, and that's why I'm asking
Yes.
these questions.
No, I'm quite happy to answer.
Yeah, so just, I've got a couple other questions and I will come back to the wells, but, talks here about, oh, you have an odor from the sewage treatment plant,
Sorry, the which?
an odor,
Oh, yes.
and it shows a little bit of odor going north, a little bit coming south.
Yeah,
And I'm curious why there was no, where is, in this area here is predominantly west wind.
yes. So, and you're thinking correctly, but you're thinking backwards.
That's normal.
So, thank you. So you're right, the prevailing winds are mainly east-west. But in prevailing, that means like 65% of the time roughly. So what happens, and the reason why the plume is more in a north-south direction is because the more wind you have, the more dispersion it creates, and it basically dilutes it so that the concentrations are so low you can't smell anything. The one thing I will say is the province have an odor criteria, which is 1 odor unit per second. An odor unit is a threshold where people can discern that something is there, not necessarily what it is. And the MECP threshold is to not exceed 1 odor unit more than 0.5% of the time, which is 44 hours per year. In this case, we do not, the model shows that we do not exceed that threshold ever at any point unless you're within roughly 20 meters of the plant. And then it still does not exceed it more than 0.5% of the time, so.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to appendix 1, it's the hydro evaluation. In that evaluation, it talks about another hydrological report from E&D Wilson Company, something like that. I couldn't find it in the reports.
Right.
Available?
I'm not the person to ask for that, because and let me explain, the Ian Wilson Associates, they did a peer review on our report and they wrote 2 letters. they wrote one basically that presented their comments on the initial part of the report. And then they reviewed the revised report to ensure that we had covered off all of their comments. So they were subcontracted, I believe, through DM Ross, right?
Yes.
And so the one thing that is absent from the report is all of the back and forth between DM Ross through all of the reports and ourselves and also Ian Wilson. So, but I mean, he's in essence a consultant that's hired by the township. Because of the nature of the back and forth and the amount of comments back and forth, it wasn't the intention to include those documents within the overall ESR. But there's no reason why you couldn't have to read through them.
And maybe I asked, I apologize if I asked the wrong person, could I ask BM Ross, you were happy with this comment, or he is happy with your back and forth? Or this Mr. Ian?
Yeah.
Wilson, sorry.
Yeah, so I can just sort of speak to this briefly. So at BM Ross, we don't have a hydrogeologist on staff. And so when we have a project we're reviewing where we need that expertise, we would reach out to, quite often it is Jeff Ruther. So Jeff Ruther is Ian D. Wilson Associates. He's also the hydrogeologist that overviewed the Boyce Street well reconstruction. So because he's very familiar with the geology and the hydrogeology of the area, he is the person that we recommended that we go to. And initially his concerns with the test well were that it wasn't confirmed those two separate zones. And so there was a lot of additional work done by Mike and the team to confirm the, I guess, the information in the well, mainly the video that they did going down so they could confirm whether two zones were, and all of Jeff's comments have been incorporated into the updated hydrology report and then into the ESR. And he was completely satisfied that his comments were incorporated. He is acknowledging there is additional work to be done, like the sleeve and the permit to take water and all that. But he's comfortable with it moving forward as part of the ESR.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a few more, if that's okay. Taking up too much time there, apologies. So probably the most important, there's a couple here you've answered in between about interference. In my opinion, I think this is the most important question I'm gonna ask you. On page 32 of the hydrological evaluation, it talks about current wells in Severn. And it talks about there's a bunch of wells, I don't know what a bunch means, how many there is, that have jet pumps.
Yeah.
Now, jet pumps, as you mentioned, I know they're limited to the lift they have. So they can only pump what 25 feet, something,
23.
23 feet.
I mean,
So the question I asked, Mike, was, down the road, if there's an issue with the jet pump, whose responsibility is it to fix that one?
right. So the circumstance, first of all, the well log database shows very few, like I'm gonna say less than half a dozen, shallow dug wells. We know that, and the reason for that is you didn't have to register wells up until 2005. It was recommended that you do, but a lot of people never did. And particularly dug wells or bored wells were very typically not registered. So you could have a circumstance where you have a well, and if the well could be 160 feet deep, but if it has a jet pump in, it's only pumping water from 23 feet. But in a case of, if there was a case of cumulative impact and this well, or the subdivision wells caused drawdown and impacted the well, those wells' ability to provide water, then the simple solution is to take out the jet pump and put in a submersible pump. Because you can put in a submersible pump down close to the bottom of the well and it'll produce lots of water. The one thing is, so under the Ontario Water Resource Act, which is a provincial regulation, there's a legal requirement that if somebody screws up somebody else's water, they have to fix it. The regulation doesn't define how you have to fix it, but so if the subdivision well affected local wells, then it's on the ownership of the developer and at the cost to the developer to remedy that situation. So the other thing that I will mention is, you know, the subdivision is gonna have a certain period where it's gonna take a number of years to grow and occupy. So the cumulative impact associated with well use, it develops over an extended period of time. During that initial period, we're gonna be able to monitor, and we already have the monitoring data from the wells that we have monitored so far. And you're gonna be able to take the drawdown data that's observed during the initial years of the subdivision. And you can go back and then compare that to your predicted drawdowns. If you remember, I showed you the graphs with the 3 lines on it. So that's your predicted case. You're gonna go back through those initial years and monitor, and you're gonna compare that against the predictions. If the predictions are wrong and you're seeing more drawdown, then you're gonna, you're gonna have time to fix it before it becomes a problem where you're actually impacting on the ability of private wells to do their job.
Thank you for that. I just had a couple of quick questions here that you don't know about. So. Would you know, I said in the report, I can't remember, how many wells would be in City of Florida?
There's 214 wells in the well log database. I know.
They may not all be active, would they?
Well, yeah, I know for sure that some of them are not active. And there's probably a small number that were not registered as well. So it's around that number.
So I guess where I'm going is, in our experience and kind of including the Boy Street well, an average well lasts about 50 years.
Yes.
It'll take 10 years. It's farming math here. So we've got 200 wells spaced, over 50 years. In the village of Sebringville, we should have an average of 4 wells a year having an issue, whether that means a hole in the casing, being too small, things like that. How moving forward does the developer and I guess eventually the municipality of Perth South deal with a well that goes dry, gets hole in the casing, through normal attrition, as opposed to saying it's part of the development, or it's because of the development, sorry.
Well, there's multiple lines of evidence that you use to do that. We do about 200 well investigations for exactly that reason every year. Our company does. The first thing is, in this particular case, we're going to have monitoring wells and in different directions and at different distances from the source wells. So that's going to give us information on the water levels in the different horizons at different distances. So it gives you a point of comparison to see if you're seeing the same thing occur in the private well that potentially has the impact compared to what the monitoring wells are telling you. The other thing that we do is we in those cases, when it's because of well age, it's almost always something mechanical. So we can use the mechanical camera to see the condition of the casing. You can look at the condition of the electronics and the distribution system to see. I had one earlier this month, and it was near Baxter, and the person had an $8,000 fancy well controller, and it kept entering a fault condition. And I knew that we were not seeing any effect, and so we searched through it and found out that it was this expensive pump controller and had nothing to do with any pumping at subdivision.
Thank you. One final question. Carrying on from Councillor Bell's question here, talking about the Iverton drain. So, my understanding, I've heard the same things from residents, that there are periods right now that the Iverton drain can overflow. Regardless whether the subdivision goes through or not, being it's a municipal drain and the water is coming, from further east and also south of the tracks through that Iverton drain. I mean, if I own the land as a farmer south of the tracks, I would be petitioning to have the Iverton drain cleaned out and expanded. It's not deep enough, it doesn't control the water now. How? If I was a resident, and I would be concerned if there's 2 liters a day coming out of the stormwater pond. Going into that drain, and then it overflows sometime in the spring runoff. So even though the stormwater drain, the sewage plant have nothing to do with it, it's overflowing. And the residents, in my opinion, have a right to be concerned if there's residual wastewater in there.
Yes.
Should that Iverton drain not be cleaned out before this starts or during the process of that? Now, I realize there's a lot of trees that have grown up because it hasn't been cleaned out in over 45 years.
So
Years.
So the drain superintendent has said that as part of this, they will go out and survey it and make that determination specifically. So it's really up to the drain superintendent. I know that we have had complaints from people, A, about flooding, B, about clogging with vegetation, and my personal belief is the same as yours, that it's overdue.
Thank you for your answers, Mayor, thank you for indulging me, I apologize to anybody I forwarded, thank you for that.
I just want to go over, Mike, was there talk in the report that there would be 2 wells, could be 2 wells drilled on block
2 wells, correct?
on block 24?
Yes.
Why would you do 2 wells on 24 and not that one down on 101?
So
Like, is it different, would it be a different aquifer down on 101
No.
or the same thing?
no, I mean, we see the same aquifer in Stratford supplying the municipal wells in Stratford. The geologic units in that contact zone extends for probably 50 kilometers.
Okay.
So the reason for that is because the test well is such a high yielding well, putting, the second well is really intended just as a backup. And, so if the pump fails or somebody hits it with a car or something like that, that you're not running out of water. But because of the volume that we see as a sustainable yield from that well, there's a full expectation that we will never pump 2 wells at the same time. And so if you put it down in the park block, you'd have to run a force main up to block 24. You would also have to have a second backup generator. You'd also have to have telemetry controls between the control building and the wellhead, so that you have to have a way to turn it on and off automatically and those kind of things. That's not a trivial thing to do. And if you look, for example, in Shakespeare, St. Paul's, and Mitchell, and almost all the communities around here have multiple wells, but they're all in the same place on the same block. So it's an engineering control thing. If, on the other hand, if we had drilled the well, and let's say we need 50 gallons a minute, and we found that the well was only going to provide 40 gallons a minute, then we want to have the wells separated by a distance so that they don't mutually interfere with each other, and that way you're not basically stealing your own capacity.
Councillor Jeff,
Sorry, just something that came up. So I want to take a step away from clean water, and I want to go back to the sludge conversation.
Sure.
So, last year, about this time in the township, we had a sludge fire, and it was not nice. Yeah, so when I hear 240 days potential storage.
Yes.
You know, this, my understanding is, and you gentlemen get the grant and report, so my understanding is it's self-ignited. Has that ever been an issue with storage, in the, treatment plants?
I've never heard of it being an issue in treatment plants, but the other mitigation is this.
Okay, I can't remember if it was pellets or sludge, but regardless, it was nasty and there was a corner of the township that didn't smell nice for us.
So the first thing is, if you recall, I said your sludge is basically somewhere between 3.5% and 8% solids. So that means it's 96.5% to 92% water. So the other thing is, it's still fully treated, it's aerated, which, so if there is any residual organic matter in the sludge, which there will be, that decay process continues, and you eventually get to the point fairly quickly, like within a couple of weeks, where there's zero active organic material in it, and you're basically, you know, it's primarily non-reactables, so it's plastics people flush down the drain, sand, that type of stuff.
Thank you. And one final question, more on procedure. Should council endorse this? My question is, will the Arcadius letter that Get Concerned presented be added to the commentary? And yes, maybe I understand Arcadius is doing a full review. Will that be added to the commentary as well?
I don't know what the full review is going to say, but the reality is, comments made by any stakeholder are gonna be part of the report.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have one other question in terms of sludge. In that case, if there's a worry about the volume that's present, then you can truck it to the pelletizing plant anytime.
Okay,
It's on the 240 days, it's only for spreading on concrete.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilor Dennis.
Just one last question, I forgot to ask that, this is from my notes here. In the report, it mentions that there's a water reserve for fire.
Yes,
Will that be at the wellhead or will that be on Station Road?
it would be in the storage tanks at block 24 would be the typical place for it. Excuse me, so you would have storage tanks there that would serve both the active distribution system for drinking, but also fire. And normally it's the same system so that you always have active turnover in the tanks. Then you have high lift pumps that supply, and usually there's a stage of, you know, any 3 to 6. And as there's a demand goes up, more of those pumps kick on. Your last pump is your fire supply pump, because it's gonna turn on and it's gonna be something like 1,400 liters per minute. The distribution system in a typical system would have fire hydrants as part of the water distribution system. So that pipe would be then sized for active fire flow. One of the other things that we have discussed is whether or not you could also run a fire hydrant out to Station Road and out to Highway 8, so that it would give another point where the fire department could connect to fight a fire that's outside of the subdivision. The other thing is, and one of the comments that we received was that we used the simplified method to calculate what the fire storage requirements would be. And that comment is correct. But that's also something that gets designed based on whatever the subdivision is designed as, because it depends on the type of housing and how far apart they are, and what materials they're made from, and all those kind of things.
Thank you for that.
Any questions? I want to thank councilors for all their homework that they did on this. We have come up with 24 pretty important questions. And I want to thank Mike and the team for answering those questions. It seems that you have gone over and above. If we accept this and endorse this environmental study, it moves it to a 30-day period for more, comments could be made by anyone.
Yes, oh yeah,
Okay,
that's what the 30-day period explicitly is.
right. So I have a, go ahead.
Sorry, could we clarify that the document will reside at the ERO with the ministry for the comment period?
You know, I don't know the answer.
Hopefully, the municipality has it available, like there's, when the notice is issued, there should be a link. So that people can download the report, where it's housed, like typically, it'll be on the municipal website, whoever,
Okay.
yeah, typically.
And that 30-day period essentially is triggered once the notice of completion is actually published. So it's gonna depend on the publishing date.
All right. All right, I have a recommendation in front of me that the council receives the update on the draft environmental study report for the Sebringville Municipal Class EA, and further that council endorses the draft environmental study report as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, seconded by Councilor Jeff Bell. All those in favor? Carried. All right, thank you again for your report. Very detailed. We are now moving on to reports. Will council like to take a small 5-minute break? I would suggest. is on her way. So, she'll just come on over. And we realize this is his house. We are at 8.1, are we on, okay, we are at the report for the chief building official by law enforcement record fee. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Orr, members of council. So my activity report for the month of June before you there, we had a pretty good month, 13 permits were issued with a construction value of just over 1.3 million and almost 7,000 in permit fees were collected. The year to date, we stand around 10.5 million construction value and almost 47,000 in revenue. We anticipate this trend to end. We do have a lot of permits in the queue, so we're in pretty good shape. I'm also happy to report the office renovations are going fairly well. They're just putting the finishing touches on everything, and yeah, we're really pleased with the way it turned out. And encourage council to walk through and have a look at everything. The new space will work well for staff and will be more efficient. Bylaw enforcement, there was one new issue for the month we're working through, and there was one new property standards complaint for the month as well. That's my report before you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Martin? Seeing none, I have a recommendation that the CBO update report be received for information. Moved by Councillor Jeff Bell, second by Councillor Vanessa. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Director of Public Works, Pen.
Thank you, Mayor Orr. First report is my update report. Just a couple highlights here. So the new well in St. Paul's, the drilling's been done. And we're just waiting on all the approvals and reports for the ministry. And then the next step would be to get it put online, switched over, and the plumbing kind of connection work that connects it to the building. So hopefully that will happen within the next month, but I don't see it happening like right immediately because they're still working back and forth on all the approvals and stuff basically for it. And then over at the Perth Woodham Community Center, had a meeting with the contractors. They're getting ready to install the new electronic sign. So hopefully within the next few weeks, they're gonna get they're gonna put a new base in, concrete base. And then it's gotta harden and stuff a bit, so then a few weeks after that, they'll get the sign up. So it's looking like it'll be up and ready before the fall fair, kinda get that all done, before fall fair, which will come up soon too, so. Anyone has any questions on anything, be happy to answer.
Any questions for Ken? Councillor Vanessa?
I have a couple questions here, Ken. Station Road construction, number 3 here. Did the residents of Seagreenville, are they notified of that? I haven't seen anything on the first website, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so the residents all along there, all got hand delivered a notice, so people who live on Station Road, Blacks Mill, they will have the construction happening in front of them, they got a notice delivered to them. And it was supposed to be on our website, we just kind of found out this morning that we couldn't find it yet either, so we're gonna get that on our website, that notice right away as well, so.
That's my fault. Sorry.
Just a question about the notice. I noticed in there that the contractor has hired I guess an engineering firm to look at basements, things like that. During construction, if there's any problems with foundations or whatever, is there any if one of the residents along there does not want to have them, is there any repercussions or?
No, the residents will be getting another letter. I need to get a series of 3 letters from the company that does these inspections. And it's fully up to the residents whether they want to participate in that. So it is common to do, especially in older areas where you have older homes and they're close to the road. So if the residents are okay with it, then they have this contractor that would come in and they do just an inspection on, you know, the foundation, you know, if they got an old stone foundation, they take pictures, kind of record everything. So that if there's any damage done from vibration and construction equipment, You know, they have old walls, lath and plaster type of stuff, they take pictures of all that. So that it's very easy to identify if there is some damage caused by construction, there's no questions that it can get repaired by the contractor through their insurance, whatever, a lot quicker, so. But it is a voluntary thing, you know, they'll walk along the sidewalk and, you know, they can get some camera pictures, maybe of some stuff outside, but it's optional for the residents if they wanna opt in for that. It's recommended that they do, it's for their protection benefit, yeah.
And the reason I asked the question, it's 30 or 40 years ago. When road 130 was reconstructed through Avonton. There was a lot of court cases after that. There was one house that was a problem. And I don't know if inspection was done before or after, but it took a long time for the county and that resident to settle in court. So I would recommend residents to go through the process. Thank you for that. And just one other question. Would you have an update on the gravel truck we bought a few years ago? And also, has the tender been let for the new gravel truck?
For the tandem snowplow truck, yeah, so we're expecting it to arrive the end of the month. They had a built completion date coming up soon, and then they got a little bit of time, a week or so after, to do their PDI and stuff on it, so it's getting close, but I've heard that a bit before, so I'm a little bit skeptical. And I have been in discussions with Bill from the county. He's working on, so we're gonna try and maybe do something together a bit for a truck that he's trying to get okay to get another truck on order for them as well, so. And so we've been talking about that, hopefully doing it soon, kind of liking to see this one show up. But it's getting close.
Not snowing yet.
No, but I was surprised when he said this morning about the new emissions stuff, I didn't really know much about what that meant.
Thank you.
Councilor Corner.
I see you were down line 14 doing some trimming and that, I guess that's for the future of road construction there, maybe.
Yeah, some of it was just needed too, but yeah, just trying to get it done before we get some new construction.
What other work you have to do? So, yeah.
There's some ditching and stuff, just as well, yeah.
Any other questions for Ken? Seeing none, I have a recommendation that the Director of Public Works update we receive more information. Moved by Councilor Corby, second by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. And we are on the John Deere Greater Powertrain relay.
Thank you. Here, the next report is for council's information. So Branch was working on, we got the grader down there delivered to them. They've had a chance to take it apart more and do a very detailed inspection on it. Through the detailed inspection, they identified some additional stuff works that they're recommending that weren't included in the Relife program, which kind of had a specific limited scope. Depending on what, so they've come back with a list of some of the additional stuff that they're recommending to be completed. So I just wanted to bring that forward to council because we need a little bit of additional funding over and above what we had talked about. It was kind of approved before. The guys at Brand, the mechanic that did the detailed inspection, Scott and I went down and met with them and all this stuff. And very impressed with his detail, attention to detail. Did a very good job. You know, I think some of the stuff was maybe a little more worse condition than they had thought. Mainly a lot of it's related to just corrosion. A lot of the stuff, you know, some of the wiring harnesses and stuff, they want to make sure the machine's gonna be good when we get back. Not have, you know, new engine, but the wiring harness that runs it that will cause problems potentially in the future, so. So yeah, that's the report there. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions regarding this? I have cold, sorry. Councillor Jeff Bell.
Yeah, I just find it concerning that I feel like we're restraining from our asset management plan with this, and we're 3/4 of the way to a new grader and not getting the life cycle. So I've got concerns about carrying on with the relife. Do we know what the availability of a new grader is from Grant?
I'm talking with the sales rep from Brant, and they are selling quite a few graders right now. They have some in the yard. I think they're all sold though.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a big concern on long delays for a delivery. If you were going that way.
Any discussion, more discussion? Thank you, Mayor Ryan.
Further to Councillor Bell's comment on asset, excuse me, asset management. I guess where I'm really concerned that I think we've gotten out of control as far as the graders go, because if we do follow our asset management, I think we end up buying 3 new graders in 6 years. And there's no way we should be doing that, and this may allow us to spread it out and not spend the full cost of a new grader. And the other thing is, I would be, as the chief pointed out, I would be concerned about the new emissions on a new grader and the cost and maintenance, etc., because they are an issue.
Councillor Cody.
I was thinking last night, we only put 600 hours on a year. And, you know, I talked to an ex-CEO from another municipality. He said, you know, you should be looking at your graders at 9,000 hours to do a motor job. And when you think about it, we only put 600 hours a year on this machine. It's gonna last 14 or 15 years. I don't believe it'll last 10 or 12. I think it'll last longer, so. I still like this idea. I'd still like to do it. I mean, we're staying away from the emissions. What I was told was it's a brand new machine. The frame isn't, but it's a brand new machine, new motor, new tranny. It should last 15 years at least. And to me, this machine should last longer than it's gonna if it's in that bad a shape. I just don't know why it's in that bad a shape when it's 15-year-old, when it's supposed to last 18+ years.
Any other comments? Councillor Bell.
No problem, I would do anything possible to stay away from the emission standards we have right now, let alone them getting more complex in the future. We've seen it on our gravel trucks, all of a sudden you have a $20,000-$30,000 bill for emissions. If we can stay with the old engine, or the new engine with the old, without emission standards, definitely. I think that's well, I see it on tractors. I mean, as farmers, most tractors are deleted, which means all the emissions are thrown off. Just because you can't afford the downtime and the costs. And I realize municipality cannot be that. So if we can avoid that, I'm all for it.
Councillor Martin, do you have any comments? No. Okay. Just so that I'm clear here. So for the grader relife, it would be about $518,000 to replace, to fix, redo this one that we have now, and it is our newest machine, but still it's. Well, how old is it?
15 years old.
15 years. So our newest machine is being redone at a cost of $518,000. A brand new machine would be closer to $700,000. So as Councillor Brown mentioned, we are closer to are we throwing good money after that? is the question that I have here. I have nothing against this relife, I really don't, but, I think when I do the math here, I don't think that this would potentially be when we should do this. I'm also fearful, as the deputy mayor said, we are going to have how many machines come due all at once, and I don't want to do that. So whether or not we have to look at our asset management plan again, maybe we have to reevaluate some stuff, but, you are spending, $518,000 on used equipment. And yes, it may not meet the environmental standards, and maybe you wanna stay away from that, but eventually we're gonna have to get that. So I want to make sure that council is clear that you are spending a fair bit of money on a used piece of equipment when you are close to buying a new. So, this is my comment. Councilor Martin?
I do have a question here. Do we have an idea of what this would bring on Dale's Blueberry Park with this whole one? At this stage in this repair,
I don't have an accurate number on that.
do you think some sort of, are we talking $5,000 or?
I would hope it's more than that. But yeah, I don't want to give a number, I'm not.
There's no ball.
If there had been, work done on it, I think it would be more, than. It's just like, I don't know what we would get, not sure.
Not much, that is, that's sort of.
I would, we would get a good amount, but.
I just have no knowledge to know whether that's a $1,000 maybe or 70,000, not like, just how many zeros?
More than one?
Yeah.
I would hope it would be closer to. This, the 70, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
That's helpful, like, whether there's any value in that machine at all. So that also, if we do the math on that, right, that brings us that 700,000 down. Think of the cost of the new, or that one leaving, maybe 630,000 it costs to get a new one. Versus 518 to refurb this one.
And the greater V-Life refurb should they say 10 to 12, maybe 15 years. But the new one will have 18 to 20 years. So he's included all of that in here for what it cost for keeping it up, the annual cost for the V-Life and everything like that.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
So if we were to purchase a new grader, which one do we get rid of?
Yeah, that would be, one of my questions as well, and maybe we'd have to get, somebody like Brand or somebody to come in and give us their professional opinion on it, so that. Because some of the other graders we've already invested in the new engine and stuff, so that component should be good for quite a while, but see if there's other components. We did have some oil sample testing done a few years ago on stuff, and I don't think there's any major shown that would be expected to fail on the existing ones based on that.
Deputy Mayor.
Just in, my thinking is that the one we've got down for relife has almost 10,000 hours and never been touched, is that correct? The oldest one, I believe, if I recall, has around 5,600 hours on it since a new engine was rebuilt, was put in, and the other one is around 6,600 hours on a rebuilt engine. So if we get rid of the oldest grader, and thinking, that means that we would have to keep the grader that's down for relife, and we're gonna have to spend over $60,000 to fix it, to keep it. Would that make sense? Because it's already got 10,000 hours and they recommend that you rebuild anything over 9,000 hours, if I don't correct. So we would end up with the dilemma on, do we keep the newest grader and spend 60 or 70,000 on an engine and whatever else it may cost to keep it going? Or do we get rid of the newest grader and keep the oldest? Which blows your asset management right out the window. So
should we review the whole asset management on each of those machines before we make this decision? Because I'm worried that later on down the line, if we're not here, that the council will say, why did they make that decision? Now I gotta replace, how many graders in how many years? So it would be nice to stagger the purchase of these and to relife these. Nothing against the relife, I really don't. But is it make sense to relife this one? And he did say that there was considerable corrosion on this one, so. Councilor Vanessa.
Yeah, further to Bob's comments here, in the notes here, it says that the oldest grader we have has only 1,500 hours on the engine. And the 2008 middle one is only 600 hours on the engine. It was replaced last year. Okay. Or not replaced, it rebuilt, sorry. So yeah, I'm fully in favor of going with this Relife program. I've spoken to a couple of contractors in this area who work with heavy equipment. This is something they do on motors all the time. It's not an unknown program. I do agree with the comment that we have to relook at our asset management plan, but in my opinion, I think graders should be going a lot longer. And I think trucks should be a lot shorter because they're all garbage. I mean, we have them at 10, 12 years, they should be 8 years. Graders probably should be 25. Right? And this is the concerns you have in other municipalities. I mean, graders are expensive. Central Huron just bought a used one for 300,000. They got rid of one that was over 30 years old. So it's huge cost, right? But I'm fully in favor of moving forward with this program.
On this grader.
Understood, correct. Thank you.
Any other comments? Do we not want to review the asset management plan? Do we not want to delay? I'm just throwing it out there.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We need to review the asset management plan, but I think we have to look at our, as Councilor Vanessa said, our trucks, et cetera. And whether we look at hours or age or whatever, I don't know, but the way I see it right now, our asset management plan is not working. When I look back at what our trucks cost us over this past winter and how many were down. So yeah, I don't think we can do it in a time sensitive that this grader requires. But I think we definitely have to review it within the next, probably before the next budget. My way of thinking.
Councilor Martin.
So the way I see it here is that we either have a new grader and the two existing graders, we trade in this one. Right? It's where we're getting confusing is if we don't do the relife on this, now we're gonna shift around and we're gonna get rid of one of the other ones. Which then gets us into a problem of age. But if we treat this particular grader as either this rehab or the new one and the other two graders stay the same. The math doesn't make sense to me at all. Like if we start shifting around the graders, maybe that's a bigger conversation. But if we're talking like, we have these other two graders and this one, either a rehabbed grader or a new grader. I can't see why $100,000 to avoid some environmental things, rolling the dice on this makes any sense anymore. And I've talked to a couple of the staff, they really are concerned about this program, some of them too. So anyway, I think that is, I'm not exploring this anymore, and I was before. I was very on to this. Well, I thought it was great, but I definitely have concerns now because it seems to be ballooning. That's the point of reason.
What is our financial commitment to Grant at this moment?
I don't have a dollar amount, but we would be responsible for the cost they put into it right now, doing the detailed inspection. I don't expect it to be a huge amount, but, and then we got to put that together, I guess, if we decided not to go with it, so there would be some costs. But I don't have a dollar amount on that.
Tracy?
Through you more, would like to make a couple comments on the asset management plan. First of all, it's a roadmap for us to be planning for the future and for also being able to depreciate our assets the same as a private. That doesn't mean that you can't leapfrog vehicles, because you're always gonna need one. And so I think council discussing which grader needs to go, it shouldn't be based on age, it should be based on factual information, because like you say, you could have a grader that's brand new and it's, you have to replace the engine in a year or something like that. So I don't think we really have so much problem with our asset management. I mean, we can look at the years, that's not a problem, but I don't think it needs to be changed for the sake of changing of when we do a vehicle. I think if, council is on board with this relife, then maybe we need to look at a policy that we look at the amount of hours or maybe a year, and then that's when we decide we're going to do something like that. But I just don't want council to get like all worried that our asset management plan is good. It's the roadmap, and like I say, it's you could say, this building's gonna last 50 years and all of a sudden 40 things go wrong with it. It's a roadmap for tracking your depreciation and planning for the future for long-term is what the profits want us to do, right? So I think we're in good shape that way, but like Sue says, it's do we need to look at maybe changing the ages, but I don't think it really pertains to, no, we can't replace this till it says it's supposed to, because it's something's always gonna happen, right? So I just wanted to clarify that I don't want council thinking our asset management plan is garbage. It's a good asset management plan, but but as Mayor Orr said, it's if you look at it, we should be replacing a different, but maybe it's not a lemon like the one that. I don't know, but that made any sense to anybody, but.
Any other further comments? I'll read the motion. The recommendation of the Perth South Council receive the John Deere grader powertrain relife report for information and provide confirmation to proceed with an additional cost of $68,517.50 as estimated for recommended work. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councilor Vanessa. All those in favor? All those opposed? We are tied, so it is defeated. So where do we go from here? Can we get a report potentially on what it costs to have that put back? And maybe we could, and I know it's time sensitive, but could we look at what we need for graders? And the cost of a new one? And this timing of, are we replacing a new one this time? When do we have to replace the next one, hopefully? Does that make sense? Like, I don't want all the graders to come up for replacement all at once. For the future of the council.
I think to add to that though, we have had discussions like prior years when we're doing the funds we set aside for equipment replacement.
Yeah.
And many times we have identified that there's gonna be years or periods where there was a lot of, and that's why one of the reasons why we were doing that. Equipment reserves was to help, we put more money away some years than we use, and then other years, through our asset management type of plan. So, we were intending to help cover those ups and downs, or the period where there was quite a bit, potential at once. through contributions to the equipment reserve. Because that's something we've talked about since I've been here, that, you know, there's a bunch of trucks coming due this year and not much coming one year, so.
And if another municipality has bought some good used equipment, would there be any good used equipment? Would we consider that? I'm just throwing that out there. Councilor Corbett.
Maybe we should get a firm price on a new grader before we get too far here.
Yeah.
Is this a firm price or probably?
If I was budgeting, I would use that $775 price. That's in the report.
But all of a sudden, we went from, we were at $180,000 difference, now we're gonna be $250,000 difference. That doesn't make any sense to me, after what we just voted on. I think we should get a firm price first, then.
You could get a firm price for a new one and maybe look at the used one. Is that fair?
I didn't rush.
Grader. I thought we were going for a new grader, and just. In the boat. I think we need a firm price on a grader, and then can we come back to a decision, or has it been defeated? For good.
I think we could always bring it back. So,
Never reconsideration.
yeah, let's have more information. come
Yeah,
first.
yeah, keep that first.
Okay. Have you got what you,
I think so. You want me to bring back some information on what we would spend to get our grader back on a new grader? And look into see if there's any used options.
Deputy Mayor?
I certainly not in favor of looking for the used grader. We already have one barn part of the rent, so, what I'd like to know is the cost to put it back together. And what do we own, and what is the price of a brand new grader with snow removal equipment?
And I really appreciate the map of where everything needs to be replaced. Timeline. Councilor Martins?
Can we also get an idea of the value of the existing grader? Is there a trade-in cost? Like, is that something that's done within 3 years? Okay.
Councilor Jeff Bell?
Sorry, yeah, just to follow on Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, I don't think we should be looking at a used grader, we have used graders. I think we should be looking at new, if we're doing something. That's my opinion.
All right. Councilor Corbett?
Just one other thing, we do have a grader sitting on the floor down there taking up room. Are we gonna wait another 2 weeks to fix this? Like, is the grader okay at Brent the way it's sitting?
I believe they pulled it out of the shop, it's still in there, but it's going to delay the end of the machine. So like, if we did decide to go ahead, you know, we've talked scheduling with Brent, we've been talking with them. And, you know, we'd like the grader back in time to do fall grading and you know, for winter and stuff for sure. You know, delays now just could cause the machine not to be ready for us, when we need it for fall grading. They did indicate if there was anything available and use something, they might be able to provide that for us while we're waiting for it to get finished, but there's no real guarantees, but it would depend on what they have available. Maybe.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
And is the, I hope that when that grader comes back, we don't take the engine out of it or something, because what I've learned is that you're pushing your luck when it with the hours it has on it, so cross your fingers.
All right, we're on 8.3, Deputy CEO Treasurer. Please see the floor is yours.
The first report is just my May and June report, because I was on vacation. Just the usual stuff, and corrects, reinvesting in some mature GICs. Ken and I have started discussing capital, I was doing the municipal drain grant, updated the budget software. Discussions with council for the report that council has already received. Finished up financial statements, just about finished up the FIR. Helped Lizette get her deputy clerk hired. Worked on the website. One thing I've attached though, the MFOA have drafted a letter that they're going to send to the ministry because the doubled OSA funding we've been getting ends in 2026. I'm not overly worried that they're gonna take it away for 2027, only because we're not meeting the housing starts that the province wants. And that's mainly because none of the municipalities can afford to take the infrastructure that's needed for these houses. But I would ask that council supports this letter that MFOA is sending to the ministry, that it is a permanent doubling of the OSA fund for our infrastructure. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions council might have.
Any questions for Tracy? Councilor Vanessa?
One question, really curious. So my understanding, and I could be incorrect, is that it was doubled for 5 years and that ends
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
So what the finance ministers or the finance people are asking is to get the same amount of money we got 5 years ago.
No, they're asking that this doubled amount that we get now is permanent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, but we got that as in 2021, we got that amount of money. And we've had 40% inflation since then. So even though we get the same amount of money as last year, it's completely devalued from what we received 4 or 5 years
Yes,
ago.
and it,
Why didn't we say we should to make it the same as 4 years ago, we should have 3 times?
it's based on a formula of the amount of residents you have and so there's a whole formula, so what I think they're trying to do is say, don't go back to that formula, come up with a new one so that we're getting like the 400,000 right now, same instead of 200,000 basically.
And I'm totally with that.
Yeah.
My concern I have is the buying power of those dollars is far less than what we're going to talk to.
Yeah, but it'll be even less if they.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
double it. Yeah, so it's a start anyways, like, I mean, obviously the province is gonna come up with their own formulas, but I mean, if everybody, says that they need it, and like I say, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can't imagine the province taking it away at this point, because they're not gonna get their housing starts if people can't build a wastewater treatment plant or a water treatment plant, so. Anyways, that's.
And I have 2 recommendations here. The first one is that the deputy CAO treasurer report be received for information. Moved by Councilor Corby, second by Councilor Jeff Bell. All those in favor? Carried. And second, that the council supports the request from MFOA for the permanent doubling of the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF, beyond 2026. Moved by Councilor Vanessa, second by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Your second report, I hope for 2026 procurement council update.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've updated the procurement policy to include the Buy Ontario directive that was effective in April of 2026. I've highlighted in the policy the things I changed, a couple wording here and there to make it a legal binding policy, and I just basically added a schedule or an appendix, which is the directive. This is just so our procurement policy follows it. When Ken and I do our first RFP for anything, we will update our tender package to reflect these things, but this is basically the outline of what the province is saying. So something like this grade you're talking about doesn't have to be bought here because it's over a certain tonnage. Different things, if it's some of the highlights, if it's gonna cost you more than 25% of your estimated project, you don't have to follow it. So there's different things that we will look at as each job comes up, whether we can not follow this or how we can So, yeah, happy to answer any questions that I possibly can. It's kind of a hard policy to swallow. Yeah, so we're just doing our due diligence to have it in our policy and, try to follow it when we have to do anything, so.
Councillor Vanessa?
I've got a few questions. Further on in this document, it states, levels that the individuals, department heads can spend up to. Is that the same as it was before?
Yeah, I didn't touch any of that stuff. I basically just updated it to get this in there. Other than that, we all kind of went through it and we didn't see anything that we really had to change. I mean, I think this is one of the things that every council, we should have council look at. So in this new term, we will probably bring this back to council for them to approve the spending and those kind of things. So.
And the other comment, I'm really concerned with this policy here. I think the Ontario government has destroyed a lot of things with this policy. Perth South, and we're an agriculture community. We send 75 to 80% of everything we produce to the US. We're poking the bear, whether we like that bear or not. They've decided they're gonna bring jobs back to the US. Last night it was announced that a 50% tariff will be started in a month. If that is true, that will be the end of a pile of, the pig industry will literally disappear within a month or two of the pork industry in Ontario. And we're the largest pork producer in Ontario, is Perth County. Perth South is involved with that too. A lot of pig farms around, I mean, grains, all sorts of products. I've got a very good friend from this, got a factory very local here. He deals in agriculture products. He has 200 employees. If this 50% tariff does come on, his factory closes within 1 week. Those people are laid off. And during the middle of harvest, that product probably gets destroyed. Like, I just cannot vote for this. I think this is absolutely insane by the Ontario government. I mean, we're now in a pissing match where, we're not using your alcohol. And we're not doing this, we're not buying cars or trucks. I just think it's insane for some a country that together has worked for 100 years very well. I don't understand the escalation from either side. I'm not absolving the US either. I think this is insane. And I know for the Perth South agriculture community, this is a disaster. And I cannot support this. And maybe Ontario government says we have to. I cannot support this directive. And I wish it was two parts, the part with the buying the part of them. I'm fine with that, but this Ontario procurement policy, I cannot vote for that.
We are legislative,
Yeah, it is a direct. So.
What? Vote against it.
all right, I will move the recommendation.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Sure. Go ahead, Mark.
Just clarify, this is not saying that we agree with the provincial government's directive, this is about changing our own policy.
Yeah.
Reflect, so if I completely disagree with the Ontario government, but I understand that legislatively they have to meet our policy.
Yeah.
I can feel confident in voting for this and still be against the policy.
Yeah. Through you, Mayor, it's similar to when we had to change our policies to say that, you couldn't just hire a local person. Like, that's totally against, the Ontario law too. It has to be a fair, process, so, those, you might not agree with it, because you wanna give a local contract, but it's against the regulation, so this is basically the same thing. We have to make our policy follow the Ontario regulation, and none of us sitting here might agree with it, but it's just something that, just like the Ontario government allows us to be a municipality. Like, if they decide we're not anymore, then we're not, but it's the same thing, we have to follow those regulations in order to function as a municipality, so, yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments?
So, Councillor Rennes still requests the
Yes.
support, so,
You read it?
I will read it and then call when I call your name after I've read the recommendation, just please answer yes or no. That council adopts the 2026 procurement policy as amended in accordance with the province of Ontario directive issued by the Management Board of Cabinet effective April 13th, 2026. Councilor Martin? Yes. Councilor Bell?
Yes.
Councilor Van Ness?
No.
Councilor Corbeau?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wilhelm?
Yes.
Mayor Orr? Yes. That vote is carried. Sorry. I messed up. I didn't get over in a second.
I was put under pressure. I usually do all the
I guess, can we take it a step back and have a move in seconder, because technically that. Oh, not. Councilor Paul moves. Any seconds? Oh. Councilor Martin. Okay. So. Is there any change to the calling of the vote? No, okay, so it's still carried. I apologize.
It's been a long day.
Yes.
All right, we are moving on to C, the report for the industrial, commercial and institutional recycling transition. Please.
You, Marilyn. Yeah, this is just, to get council's approval, they've changed the way recycling is done now. So those bins that you see around with the red lid, right now, BRA is covering the cost of those, they're being picked up separately. Starting in 2027, there's going to be a charge. So what we're recommending is that the cost of those bids can be put on the commercial, properties. There's 67 bins in First South, but 27 properties. So a lot of people have 5, like we have 5 or 6, correct? Ken? Yeah, so I think you'll find a lot of people get rid of the extra one they don't need. And there's, I've included the flyer that the RA's come up with, and this, we'll send this to all our residents, our commercial residents, and they can opt out. They can get rid of some bins, or they can actually get the dumpster, so they don't have to have the red bin picked up. So the cost per bin is on the report. So between Ken and I, we can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Tracy? Seeing none, I have a recommendation that the council implements a user fee for the cost recovery of the ICI recycling bins, following the same practice as the current wheeling bin program. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councilor Corbeau. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. You're at your report. Is that?
Thank you, Mayor. First report is my update report. If council have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Lizette on her report?
I do want to say one thing, Ireland, as you know, has started, she started in near the end of June 22nd. She has been a fantastic assistant to me. She knows a lot of the same systems, and I want to thank council for approving this position because she's been a godsend. So anyway. She saved my sanity. What little is left is she. No, yeah. See, I thought I gave myself a little bit.
All right, so we have a recommendation that the clerk's update report be received for information. Moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Vanessa. All those in favor? Here. We are at the report for the council remuneration. Any questions regarding the remuneration? And I have a recommendation that the report regarding council payroll, June 2026, dated July 21st, 2026, including total payroll of $6,037.30 be approved. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councilor Corbeau. All those in favor? None opposed. We are at the report for the section for drain addition request, the extension of the Valentine drain. Councillor Vanessa has removed himself from the discussion. Does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding that drain report? Seeing none, I have a recommendation that the council receives the request for a drain report for the Valentine Drain Extension, and further that council reports Spree Associates to prepare a report on the proposed drainage works. Sorry.
Sorry, can I just clarify one thing? So when this petition came in, it did have a name on the petition, so it did call itself the Curie Drain. So it caused a little bit of confusion on my end. I thought it was an existing drain, so again, it was just a communication issue. So I'm currently calling it the Valentine Drain Extension based on how it came about. There has been a request for this new section to be called the Curie Drain. So when it comes forward, that discussion will happen with the engineer and the landowners, so it may come back as the Curie Drain.
Thank you for
Is
clarifying.
that clear as mud? That's the way it was for me, but anyway.
No problem. Any other questions? No, so the council receives the request for the drain report of the Valentine Drain Extension, and further that council appoints Spree Associates to prepare a report on the proposed drainage works. Moved by Councillor Corby, seconded by Councillor Jeff Bell. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Welcome back. We are at the report for 2026 municipal election, lane back period.
Thank you, Mayor Orr. So this is a report that comes forward, each term of council as the election. There is a section under the act that outlines when a council becomes laid up. And some of their acts are restricted. So in the past, when we brought this report forward, the restricted acts portion has been assigned to the CEO, and I'm just recommending that we follow the same procedure. And again, these restricted acts, we would only implement them if in an emergency. We generally, it's a short period of time. It's from when nomination day closes to election day to the first term of the first day of the new council. So it sort of depends on who puts their name forward. It's highly likely that we will go into lame duck unless everyone puts their name forward. So far, there hasn't been a ton of interest, so, you know, putting that out there. We've only got these days. I don't know, it's, we're flying August 20, yeah, I'm not today. Oh, yes, anyway, so that's what this report is. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to explain.
Any questions for Lisa? Okay, I have a recommendation that the council receives the report regarding the municipal election 2026 lame duck period restricted acts of council. And that if council is in a restricted position, lame duck after nomination day, August 21st, 2026, pursuant to section 275 of the Municipal Act 2001, council delegates authority to the chief administrative officer to take action where necessary on certain restrictions listed in section 275(3) of the Municipal Act as follows: the appointment for removal from office any officer of the municipality, B, the hiring or dismissal of any employee of the municipality, C, the disposition of any real or personal property of the municipality which has a value exceeding $50,000 at the time of disposal, and D, making any expenditures or incurring any liability which exceeds $50,000. And further, that if this authority is extended only until the first meeting of the new council, and further that the chief administrator officer provide a report to council on all action taken pursuant to this delegation, and further that this delegation be finalized by bylaw 28, 2026 as approved by the council. Moved by Councillor Jeff Bell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. 8.5, Will.
Well, thank you, Mayor Orr. Just to note quickly in my report, I do have a couple of reports that will be coming to council in the near future, as I've noted. One regarding the building condition assessments, specifically around the public works complex, as we discussed earlier this month. And the other one, that will be still forthcoming is the fire prevention / inspection / public education. Officer still looking at it as well. Did want to spend a couple of moments though talking about the St. Paul's playground project. Of course, we had the Optimists here at our last meeting. Talking about the special project they would like to do as part of their 50th anniversary. There are a lot of moving parts right now. Certainly there's the Optimists, there's the grant program that's going on that has an August 1st deadline. Not forgetting about what Councilor Martin said at the last meeting, hoping for a pretty picture. Lots of moving parts going on in very, very short time frame. So what I've tried to do here, staff have a few ideas that we'll likely be putting into the grant application for August 1st. There is a minimum amount, I'm going to say it's 125,000, which means we're probably going to be throwing a lot at this project. I've tried to list some of the items there, looking at the fencing, looking at the ball diamond lighting, the bleachers, existing benches, maybe painting or repainting the sports court with lines, the trails and pathways around, and certainly some drainage and landscaping. There may be other ideas that come along. I have spoken with members of the Athletic Association as well. They will be potentially reaching out to some of their members too, but we've got some items we can even add from there. We're gonna try to get as many. So certainly over the next week or so, if council has another idea, definitely forward it on and we'll make sure we get it into the grant application. But outside of that, unless there's any questions, that's my report.
Any questions for Will regarding this report? Seeing none, I have the recommendation that the CAO be received for information moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Vanessa. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. And we already did 8.5B for the comfort tent and correspondence. I don't think we have any correspondence. We're at council reports. Councilor Vanessa, do we have any?
Yeah, fairly quiet the last 6 days. It's just been a very, very busy time going through council and talking to a lot of residents and see them at all. It's been good. Thank you.
Councilor Jeff Bell?
So one thing, Public Works again for bringing a couple of loads of mulch over to Downey for the trees that were planted. Upper Thames was a little unavailable or behind on being able to provide mulch, so Ken was able to get us a couple of loads, and so with number of parents and teachers and students, we got the mulch spread and trees watered last weekend, and so that was good. So thank you. Other than that, pretty quiet. Oh yeah, we had a 50th. We had 50th thing. We had 50th thing. So again, thank you to the Athletic Association for getting the day started. The Optimist Club was able to support by cooking the fries, running them over, sometimes with people running them down the lake and kept talking. But I had other people doing it as well. And then we carried on the bouncy castles, 5, 6 bouncy castles. Do you remember how many? About 4 or 5. Yeah, they were a little delayed. They got in an accident on Highway 7 coming here, so they had to transfer them from one truck to another. But everyone got here, everyone was fine. We got the tent out after the soccer game and Big Rotary was good, band was out. Was able to take Will and his wife for a tour of Big Hall. Thank you again for coming out and enjoying the afternoon with us. So it was good, and our big event will be October on our President's Night. Emails are going out about that. That will be much more formal, and it's one of those occasions where we are again going to put a shovel in the ground and to be able to talk about what we're doing for the community. So.
Councilor Martin?
Continuing on that, just to talk briefly about the St. Paul's Rec side of that event and Family Fun Day, very well attended. For the first time ever, we used the ball diamonds for parking, which turned out to be much safer for all the families that were on the roads. A lot of compliments from families. The trouble did become a bit of the running between the park and the bouncy castles. Taking some ideas for next time, but that was a big improvement. It's volunteer appreciation night tonight in St. Paul's, so maybe that's an opportunity to touch base with them as a group. I think there's about 80 some odd people coming, and we'll gather some ideas for your if the community comes up with things they'd like to add.
That's it for you?
Pretty quiet. I have an AGM for the mobility bus. I believe it's next Wednesday at 1:30 at the St. Mary's Municipal Building. I think it's at 1:30. I can confirm that if anybody wants to go. Other than that, all good.
Definitely.
Yes, a couple things. There, a number of meetings ago, we, on the police service board, they had a delegation come from Prospect Hill, requesting the police do two things, try and slow vehicles down, and there was a complaint about jake brakes, engine brakes on the hills. And so we sent a request in for the county to put up signs to limit use of engine brakes, and they were put up last week. And the other thing was that we don't discuss our accounts anymore, so going over the accounts, and I just have to bring this forward. In 2021, Perth County's budget was about $17.1 million. In 2026, Perth County's budget was about $27.7 million. In 2021, Perth South paid a little over $2.3 million to Perth County. In 2026, Perth South will be paying almost $4 million to Perth County. That's an increase of over $1.6 million in 5 years. A 69.5% increase. Now, with that, Perth South has been very diligent in including that $1.6 million. Our taxes have gone up 48.6%. And I'm sure if you took that 1.6 million out, it'd be a lot less. And I just had to bring that forward, looking at, we're paying almost $1 million a quarter to Perth County.
I do believe we've requested for Perth County to come, and they're putting together a presentation, so we will wait for them to come and have a discussion. All right, I was away for 2 weeks, so I really don't have too much to discuss. I did want to mention about a text this morning that DS Galvin is going to be celebrating their 65th celebration on August 27th. Tickets are a donation to the hospital. It's a dinner. If you are, I can send it out by text, but if you are interested, mark down with. So it's open to anybody on council, so please start something. The date is August 27th. All right, now their reports, the mayors, I have a recommendation that the report regarding the mayor's activity monthly report of June 2026, dated July 21st, 2026, be received for information. Moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Cordew. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, approved. We are at bylaws. The bylaw 2026 appoint the deputy clerk. Recommendation of the bylaw 26-2026 being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk for the township of Perth, be given first, second, and third readings and be properly signed and sealed. Moved by Councillor Jeff Buttis, second by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. We are in bylaw 27/2026, appoint division registrars. The recommendation of the bylaw 27/2026 being a bylaw to appoint a division registrar for the township of Perth be given first, second, and third readings and be properly signed and sealed. Moved by Councillor Corby, second by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carried. And we are at bylaw 28/2026, delegate authority to the CAO during lame duck. The recommendation of the bylaw 2026 being a bylaw to delegate authority to the CAO during the lame duck period for the township of Perth, keeping the first, second, and third readings and be properly signed and sealed. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councillor Corby. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. No other announcements? Motion? Councillor Knapp?
I'm not sure what notices of motion means. Had a quick discussion earlier with, Lizette about it. I would like to bring something to our next meeting talking about the integrity commissioner.
Okay.
I don't know how much details you want now, or if we do it then, I've never done this before, I have no clue. I can give details,
Do you want to speak to it or?
I'm not, our brief discussion didn't include the topic, so,
correct.
is
Would
there,
you like the topic?
do you have concerns with the integrity commissioner? Do you have?
Absolutely, I have concerns with integrity commissioner, we've had two reports come out in the community in the last 6 months, one in Perth South, one in Perth County. I view it as a totally, I mean, you've got the person charging, deciding whether to go ahead with the case. There is very little discussion, I mean, the community, council simply get a large bill. The person defending themselves has an extremely large bill, even if they're proven innocent afterwards. And I would like to bring a motion at the next meeting, and I will have more to talk about it, but I think if a person is considered innocent after integrity commission, council should be reimbursing their fees.
You're welcome to write that up and I think it needs to be in a written form.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not.
And then we'll have that discussion. Thank you for giving us the topic and, by next,
August 11th meeting.
August 11th meeting, then that will be written in form and then we can discuss that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other business? Public question period, saying no one here. We are at 16.1, confirming the bylaw, the recommendation of the bylaw 29/2026 being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution of the township of Perth, beginning first, second, and third readings and be properly signed and sealed. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carried. And we are adjourning the adjournment of regular council meeting. And we're just noting that a closed session of council will be held following the completion of the regular meeting. Recommendation that this meeting does hereby adjourn at 12:37. Moved by Deputy Mayor Wilhelm, second by Councillor Portman. All those in favor? Carried. All right.